had a guest earlier on saying, yeah, these tariffs on steel, aluminum, copper, the U.S. can triple them, increase them by 4 times, but the overall production out of China and the impact it can have on the economy as a percentage of the overall GDP is going to be not that significant. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's largely correct. As you just described, Chinese imports in the U.S. of Chinese steel and Chinese aluminum have fallen quite a bit over the years, and of course, they've already been targeted previously under the Trump administration. There is some concern about Chinese steel potentially being rerouted through Mexico, and to the extent that that becomes a larger concern, we need the fine-tuning perhaps of existing policy. But the fact is that this is an incredibly targeted measure, which means that the economic impact, positive or negative, of that will also be very minimal. This is largely, on this particular matter, we are looking at a political move rather than one that is done with a big, thick economic case behind it.
My point is, Shehzad, please help us understand what is the purpose then behind it? Is it just managing the optics?
I think on this particular measure, when we talk about steel tariffs, now, of course, the president has said that he'd like to see something happen. He hasn't actually announced a measure. It is, of course, very likely that we might, we get a 301 investigation or so forth on this. When you talk about shipbuilding, there's a real case, an economic case to be made, certainly, that we need to look at China's trade practices, or rather the unfair trade practices there. So the economic case is much stronger on the shipbuilding side. The economic case on electric vehicles could also be made. Some people would argue that existing tariffs are the reason why our markets here in the United States have not been flooded by Chinese EVs. So there's a combination of politics and optics. And as we get closer to the elections, the politics will become important. On certain matters, there certainly could be an economic case to be made as well.
I'm just wondering, Shehzad, what this means in terms of US-China relations. Of course, there's been that baseline stabilization off the back of that Xi-Biden summit late last year, but it's very delicate, right? And I'm just wondering, could there be retaliation coming for US companies if these restrictions are in fact put through?
There's no doubt that we might get some kind of retaliation or restrictions out of China. The scope, of course, is questionable and how damaging they may be to American companies. I think when when the Chinese government feels that certain Chinese companies are being targeted, and aggressively targeted, then they will have a bigger reaction. On the steel and aluminum tariffs, even if we were to get them, assume eventually, again, as we're saying that it's such a small measure, such a sliver of what's imported here, that they may not feel the need to directly respond to that in a big manner.